This is Adventures into History. Today we're in Talbot County, Georgia, and I'm going to take a look at another old lost cemetery in the woods. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to have any names to identify who is buried here. So first we have this great rock wall that's around a burial there, probably maybe two burials. But one thing that is super neat about this one is this single rock that is used as part of the wall here. Look at that big old rock. Whereas the back of the wall is stacked stone. So this is a good example of early settlers' burial styles here in west central Georgia. We have the stacked stone wall, but we also have stacked stone box tombs. And there's a good example of one right there. It's sagging in the middle where the grave has collapsed, and the dirt on top of the grave has collapsed, causing the stacked rock also to dip down like that. And then beside it is another example of a stacked stone box tomb, but this one has been damaged in some kind of way. I don't know if this is a case where somebody came and maybe tried to dig this one up, or whether this is just going to be natural damage, maybe if there was a tree growing there and fell over. But you see all of these rocks are displaced now, and they should be stacked like the end is here. Honestly, that looks a lot like kind of grave robbing activity that we've seen a little too often. So those are some really neat grave markers here that show the early burial practices of early settlers in this county. This county was not settled until 1827. So, you know, these would be, I'd say, if I had to guess. Now, I have no names, so I don't know who's buried here or the time period in which they were buried, but just going off of the visual evidence, I can see this would be anywhere or late 1820s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Typically, you don't see this type of burial after the Civil War era. So super neat to see this, and what an impressive amount of stonework here. Unfortunately, there are no markers, so we won't have any names right now. But these graves that we can see marked with these stacked stone monuments are not all that are out here. Let's do an initial count. We have 1, 2, 3 marked graves, marked either by the wall or the box tombs. But right here, that's an indention right there. So that's going to be a grave right here. We have fieldstone marking it. There's another indention. That one does not have any fieldstones marking it that I can see right off. There's another indention. That one is marked with a fieldstone at the head of the grave, right there. Another indention marked by a fieldstone at the head of the grave. Have a grave here. Have a grave here, marked by a fieldstone. We have rock here, probably marking a grave, or it's been displaced. We also have this rock right here that looks like it's been displaced. We have another grave right here, marked by fieldstone there. There. Directly behind that, another grave marked with fieldstone. Right here, another grave, that's an indention. So as we go out this way, we have some more rock right here. This looks more so a displaced rock. Don't see anything that screams out that this is a grave here, so probably just displaced from elsewhere. But where we came in to look at this rock wall, we have a grave right here. Now this grave has formed a very deep indention. Let me see if maybe if I get down like this, you can see it. But we have fieldstone at the head of the grave and the foot of the grave. See that there? And then there. So now I'm going to try to just go through and kind of count how many visible graves I can see out here. I just talked about those rocks right there that I said were displaced, maybe. But now I can see that that is actually marking a grave. So that rock on the end is planted and marking a grave. This is not a very large space. Kind of see around me the size of this cemetery. But there are a lot of burials within this space. So let's try to see how many graves we can identify out here. Starting from here, we have 1, we have 2. This one, number 2, is marked with a fieldstone. But look at this, there's also early plantation-era brick. So this brick is going to date anywhere, you know, very early settlement days to around the end of the plantation era right there. This looks like it's just displaced, just sitting here, but could also be being used for a grave marker. So that was our number 2 confirmed grave right there. We can see a little bit of an indention with it, but we've got the rock there to confirm this collapsed rock wall. I can't tell how many burials are within this space. I would go ahead and guesstimate that there are probably 2. The space is big enough for 2. So we're going to go ahead and say there's 4, 3, and 4. We have 5, 6, 7. As we get a little further out, we're going to try to stay in this row. I see no other indication of burials back here in this row. But if we turn around and go on this next row, we have 8. It's an indention. Don't see anything visually here. It does not mean they're not there. 9 right here, marked by fieldstone. 10, marked by a fieldstone. 11, 12, 13, 14. Don't see anything past that visually. We'll turn around, go on a different row. We have 15. This is the grave of a child right here. We can see it's very small, marked with fieldstone, the head and foot. 16. 17. 18. I do not see any burials in this space. That does not mean that they are here. They are not here. But I do see this one marked. This is another child. Very small grave. It's going to be 19. Now if you guys catch me miscounting here, please correct me in the comments. So we're at 19 there. Oh well, if you just look behind me, you can really just kind of see that row with those fieldstones marking the graves. Coming back, see if there's another row. Got a fieldstone here. How do we tell the difference between a rock marking a grave or just a rock? And the fieldstones that are marking graves are usually planted in the ground. This one is not. We're going to leave it exactly where it was, just in case. But it's not planted in the ground, just sitting on top of the dirt. Could have been displaced from marking a grave. We obviously have all that displaced rock here. But at this time, I'm not going to count that one as a grave. A good rule of thumb is for every visual grave you can identify, multiply it by 3. That rule of thumb has never failed me. I don't know for sure that there's 60 burials in here, but there certainly could be. Now if we kind of want to theorize who's... So I thought this was a planted stone, but that's not. Sitting on the ground. If we want to theorize kind of who is buried in here in what spaces, these burials back here, kind of the outlayers behind the rock wall and the box tombs, could likely be burials of enslaved people. But that's not a definite in this case, but it is a possibility. It was very common during the plantation era, which these graves certainly are of, for the enslaved to be buried around the family cemetery. Seeing the rows like we do outside of the wall with the very small markers, just the fieldstones on the head and foot, is very common in burial grounds of enslaved people. We don't know that for sure, though. It could be family, it could be members of the community. We don't know that for sure, but we do know that we have a lot of graves that are only marked with fieldstones kind of out in this area, whereas we just have a few that are marked with these rocks like this. We've also got these great big indentions right here. That's a very big indention right there. That it could go either way. That could be burial of someone who was enslaved or a family member's burial. We do not know. These that are in the box tombs, these are not common for burials of enslaved people. These are more common for the plantation owners. And even if they had a lot of money, sometimes plantations owners' graves are not marked either. So that's what I could believe is buried here in this case, plantation owners. But none of that is a definite. You know, it could be an old church graveyard. It could be a little, kind of community cemetery. But generally speaking, when we run into this sort of thing in the woods, it's plantation era and burials of plantation owners in the rock graves and enslaved people. Generally speaking, these are very early graves too, before there were a lot of marble works out here, and they used what they had to mark these graves. I'm really sad that there's no markings for anything. I would love to have a name for this cemetery. There is another plantation era brick right there. Clues like this also really help us date it and confirm that, but I'd love to have a name for the cemetery, and we could find that through deed research. Find out who owned this land way back when, but I'm not seeing any indication of any kind of marble that would have a name on it. And if we look here, we've got this great stacked stone wall. It's just sadly fallen on all these other sides. And just look at that again. Look at that big single piece right there. It's an incredible rock, very heavy. They used for one of the walls. I just wanted to walk around this wall again, not only to show you guys and fully document it, just make sure that there's no possibility there was anything engraved in any of this fieldstone that I've missed, but I'm not seeing anything like that. So it's been partially damaged over the years. We see that grave there that we talked about. The rock wall has seen damage. We have displaced rock out here, but these are people just alive like you and me, and I'm sure they have descendants around who would like to know where their family's buried, but we don't know who is here, and there could be right now somebody searching for their ancestors' grave site, and this could be it. And if it's not documented, we don't know who it is. I'd love to find out who actually is buried in this site. And it's also very important to talk about the preservation aspect of doing this sort of thing without visually recording these sites and their locations. If something were to erase something like this, you never know it was here. But another amazing old cemetery in the woods always makes me wonder who's buried out here, not only in these marked, very evident graves, but in these graves that are only marked with fieldstones out here. And these graves that are only marked with fieldstones are usually some of the most endangered because they're very hard to see. So, if someone were to run through here on a big piece of equipment like logging or something, it could go right over this and just totally erase it, and you'd never know it was here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As these people, again, alive just like you and me, and aside from the historic preservation aspect of seeing this, they they deserve to be remembered too, and maybe they have descendants who are looking for them. And all of these graves out there too. Each one, each indention, each fieldstone, each marker was a life that was lived nearly 200 years ago at the earliest. Amazing sight.